Hello everyone! Thank you for joining us today for our special session webinar today covering some of the new features available to you guys through ConstructionSuite 9. My name is Ian Schaefer. I'm going to be your Senior Product Specialist taking you through the product, and I actually have Holly joining me today for a few minutes here. She'll be handling most of your questions and everything as we go. Holly, why don't you introduce yourself and tell her what we're looking at today?
Hi everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. So great to see all of you here today as always. And we're really excited. I'm super excited for today's webinar actually. ConstructionSuite 9, as many of you know, actually just was released earlier this week. So we're really excited to have many of you who are joining us today already start to use some of the new features and tools in ConstructionSuite 9 and some of the major enhancements really that we're able to offer for this new version of ConstructionSuite come as part of the on-cost estimating program, which I know so many of you are relying on every single day. And really these enhancements are, I think, going to be things that you really love and that will make your life a lot easier as you're working with the program.
Oh, absolutely. One thing that I've noticed about this too, some of these features that we'll be talking about today have been the most hotly requested features that we've had probably within the past 5 or 6 years at least, maybe more. So we're certainly happy to bring these to you guys. And again, as I mentioned, we'll go ahead and get started here talking about some of these features, focusing mostly on things like today is estimating, like some of the new locking features, some of the great compatibility now that we have with one of our leading partners in PlanSwift. We're going to take a look at some of those direct integration options. We'll take a look at those too. And this will probably be, in fact, I know it's going to be our last major webinar before Christmas.
That's right.
We may have a couple more between Christmas and New Year's, maybe a couple more then before IBS, but just in case you guys haven't seen those pop-ups, don't forget, we'll also be talking about these and a number of other amazing features that we're going to be bringing to debut at IBS as well. That's going to be the second week of January?
It is, so that'll be January 9th through 11th. Definitely hope to see some of you guys there.
Yeah, or some of you guys, again, it looks like some of you attending the webinar today are actually some of the clients that we had the opportunity to meet at IBS last year. Love to see you guys. Glad to have you in here again. Hope to see you again this year. But for the moment, like I said, I'll go ahead and let Holly take off.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that you guys are really going to love what Ian's about to show you here. I'm going to bow out right now, but as always, we'll be standing by to answer your questions. So please feel free to chat over during the webinar. And Ian, I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Yeah, back to the Jolly Fat Man. So let's go ahead and dive in then, guys, to some of these great CS9 features. This ConstructionSuite 9 product release is coming out to all of you either now or through upgrades and updates that are going to be available for those Total Care subscribers. Again, keep an eye out on those. They're all going to be coming live over the course of the next few days, I suspect. And today I'm going to take a little bit of time to show off how some of these new features are really going to help you guys hone in on not only things like making sure that you guys are able to keep consistent estimates, a little bit more control over your team, but also how you can speed up a lot of the process by helping your team focus in on the pieces that really matter. Now, to begin with, our goal today, we're going to be talking about 3 major components with this. The first, of course, that I'm going to open up in just a moment is going to be our ConstructionSuite locking mechanisms that are available now in the estimates. There's a number of different ways that you guys can lock down these estimates and really make sure that you keep the same kind of naming conventions or access to the pieces that you want to share with your team. It really gives you guys a tremendous amount of control and if you're anything like me, precautions in there to make sure that you guys don't end up accidentally changing numbers on yourselves or anything without thinking about it. Now from there, we'll also, since we'll be working within the estimates themselves, we'll take a look at some of the assembly options that are available in ConstructionSuite 9 and some of the new features and functions available to you guys in there as well. And from there, we'll also start to talk about how PlanSwift is going to tie into this. Now, before I dive in, I do want to just mention that you guys are now looking at ConstructionSuite 9. For anybody who's been using ConstructionSuite for the past few years, of course, this is going to look very familiar. For those of you guys joining us from some of our older products, you'll notice that there's a couple of major changes in how we've laid out some of the information. Of course, this is the 9th incarnation of ConstructionSuite. We've had 8 products before this guy, and they've been getting more and more popular every year. You guys have really been diving in to find a lot of success in these programs and applications, which I love to see. I also think that it's really fun when we go back and look at some of the people still using some of our old products from 10 or more years ago. Some of you guys are still finding a lot of success there, and hopefully you're coming up to some of these new products because maybe you guys are really interested in some of the cloud hosting that we're doing with our partners at AWS or Amazon Web Services, or maybe you guys are working with new versions of Windows or Microsoft products or QuickBooks. Whatever it is, as we modernize more and more, we're looking at some of the features in here that are really going to help you guys invest more in the tools and spend less time working with them and getting more out of them as we go. Now, as I mentioned, some of the things that we're going to be looking at to begin with are going to be estimating focused. So if we come over to ConstructionSuite and take a look at the estimating tab, you're going to notice a couple of small changes here on this that kind of harken back to some of the products that we've had in years past. Now, the dashboard is still one of the newer features. We still have a lot of the components and the features and tools available to you here. Good overviews for things like cost breakdowns and change order summaries and current estimates that we're working on. And now up at the top, we've got, in addition to our estimate templates, we've got a custom templates tab as well that shows you all of the different estimating templates that you've created and gives you more of a folder structure again to work within. So now if you wanted to organize your estimating templates in a little bit more detail, have it just structured out a little bit better to help you find the ones that you're looking at, you'll be able to come here to the custom templates tab and see all of the different information that's going to be available to you guys here. Now, this is still set a little bit apart from the project templates. The project templates are still going to be available from your projects list. On this page, you'll see a templates tab up at the top, and this is one of the relatively new features going to be available in ConstructionSuite 9. The project templates can still contain things like estimate templates or schedule templates or folder structures. This estimating tab is going to be a little bit more of a throwback to people who are using a variety of different estimate template types for the job types that they're working on in this case. Whereas the project templates tend to be an exceptional way for you guys to just launch right into the type of job that you guys are working with. A little bit for both teams there. Now, of course, with the ConstructionSuite estimating system itself on cost, you're going to find a few of the changes for ConstructionSuite 9 are going to be available right in the main interface itself. Those of you coming from earlier versions like ConstructionSuite 7 or 6, or even back when it was still Excel-based in ConstructionSuite 2010 or 2009, you'll notice that some of the tab information here is going to be similar still. So navigating or finding the information that you're looking for should be very, very easy to work with. But some of the new features and the new options that we have available to you guys here are things like Save to ConstructionOnline, which takes this estimate and uploads it to the new ConstructionOnline estimating tool, takes this project totals page and makes it available online, where you can then share it with teams like project management or supervisors or even lead carpenters or anything like that if you want them to have a budget to work with. Now, from this main page, you'll see some of the first new features that we're going to take a look at today. If you'll notice down in the bottom left-hand corner of this, there's also an option here to lock estimate. Now, this lock estimate feature is going to be available in estimate templates and live estimates for projects. So you'll see a few of the various different locking options available to you here, depending on which file type you're working, if it's a live estimate, if it's a template, if it's a backup copy, whatever it may be, you'll see various different lock options available to you guys here. Now, in this, which, by the way, everybody can see the lock options. Only administrators in ConstructionSuite can make changes to these options. So anybody who clicks on this would see the various different checkboxes. But if they're just set up as a regular user in ConstructionSuite, they can't change it, but they will be able to see what they have access to in this case. Those of you who are administrators, like I am in the ConstructionSuite system here today, will be able to actually lock down or unlock various different areas depending on what we need to accomplish today. Now, with the locking mechanism itself, with the locking tool, all you have to do is check the box for whichever section here that you'd like to lock down. If your goal is to lock all of the names for your categories and your subcategories and your items, you can check the box here to lock names, and that prevents anybody from changing any of these names that you've outlined in your estimate templates or in your live estimates for your jobs. You could also take this a step further if you'd like and lock down the notes and descriptions as well. If you guys followed any of my estimates webinars, estimating webinars that I've done in the past, you'll know that I'm a huge advocate for using the description column, since it carries over to things like QuickBooks and the reports and ConstructionOnline, for providing a little bit more detail for your customers. I love the notes section for providing more of a scope of work. And if you want to be able to provide these details, but lock it down so that your maybe part-time estimator doesn't go in and change too much of the scope for the job, you can use this option to do exactly that. You can type up your notes. I've seen people put in as many as, I think we've got one company that had about 8 pages worth of text in one of their notes fields. You can put all that together. You can have it preloaded into your estimates, and now you can lock that down so that nobody goes in and accidentally deletes those areas or anything like that. Huge benefit there. You'll also have some incredible options here for doing things like locking your costs, your markups and your tax rates, any of your statuses for these sections, or any of these kind of tools will enable you to go through and put together an exceptional estimating template that you could then share with some of your project managers, your estimators out in the field, who could then take this estimate on a tablet, or if they have any kind of remote access or anything like that, they could take it out to a job site, and all they would have to do is enter in some of the quantities, which you could leave unlocked. And this gives them the ability to go into and work within that as well. So again, with these various different locking tools and features that are available within the system, you can pick and choose which of these areas you guys would like to lock down. Again, putting this into perhaps a template or an estimate section in there that you guys wish to reuse, and enable your team to take this out with them to the job site and update just a handful of these values without risking maybe, or without putting out there the possibility that they accidentally change values or try to quote unquote negotiate something down. So again, lock these down. This might be a set of settings that we use for estimate templates then. Now, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I do on occasion have a habit of going through when I'm working in an estimate itself and adjusting values after the estimate has gone live. Sometimes I do this on purpose. Sometimes it's an accident. Sometimes I don't have the ability to go through and recognize as I'm making changes really quickly. So one thing that I will do in order to help protect this estimate, this contract value, might be to go through and lock down everything except for the ability to create change orders. Now what this is going to do is, once I get the estimate in place, or as you guys are working your way through it, you'll be able to set the estimate up and lock down all of the areas like the naming section, the prices, the quantities, the unit costs, the markups. You can lock down everything except for the ability to create change orders, and therefore limit the accidental updates that might happen as you're working your way through it. Should you choose this set of options, when you click OK, you'll notice the locks show up at the top of each of these columns, and then new change orders can be created either using the right-click menu in this area, or you can go up to the Estimating tab up at the top and select the Add Change Order here. Now again, this is going to be available for any of the live estimates on any of your projects, and in order to use those change orders or to create those change orders, you always want to make sure that you're going into the area where the change order most applies. Now again, in this case, we have that visual indicator that some of these columns are locked down. We have some of the additional clues, so if we do decide to click into one of the category sheets or try to navigate into one of these sections that's locked down, even if it's just an accident, you'll notice that it's not activating cells, and if you try to open up any of these additional areas, it tells you that the estimate is locking itself down. So as you're working your way through this, again, we're very clear with any of these notifiers. We always want to make sure that these things are available to you and they're working out for you as well. And then in this case, with the live contract, we can lock it down so that the only thing available to change is going to be change orders, which is our goal. That's a focus that you want to make sure that you have for any estimates that have become contracted estimates. We don't want to deviate too much from that. Now, one thing that might make your bookkeepers happy as you're working your way through this, again, since ConstructionSuite and QuickBooks have been integration partners now for 12 or 15 years, we have been sending information back and forth between the ConstructionSuite application and the QuickBooks application now for about that long. Now, one thing that comes up very frequently is some form of control that your bookkeepers might want to have over the information exchange between the two programs. Locking will help with this as well. So as you go through and you take a look at the various different lock options, in this case, we're going to unlock everything for the moment. And to make your bookkeepers happy, while the pricing information may change, you may want to lock down the resource column so that as you enter into contracts with subcontractors or you commit to certain contracts with vendors or suppliers for deck packages or whatever it is that we might be working on, you can lock down the resources, the structure, and the names. And this will make sure that people don't go through and change the category names or the prices for anything that we're working on. It'll lock down the resources as well so that we can make sure that the purchasing always happens the same way every time for existing jobs. And locking down the structure means that we will be able to find the same things in the same place between ConstructionSuite and QuickBooks. This, of course, with the structure, it means that you can't move items around or remove any of the categories or subcategories that we're working on. So locking the structure just means that it's going to be in the same place that we left it every time. Locking the names means that we're not going to be going in there and trying to get too creative with these names, which might create new things in QuickBooks. And locking down the resources, quantities, and costs means that we're going to be sticking to these contracts that we've created. Still leaving open the possibility for creating change orders as needed or entering in some of the QuickBooks values, which you can see would be lockable down here as well. Again, just kind of keeping it focused in on having these things set so that we can always make sure that we keep that consistency between the two programs. Now, of course, this gives you a brief description for some of the other columns. So I'm sure as you guys are going through and you're using these various different lock options, you'll see a variety of different ways that you can better organize the details and the data that you guys have in these estimates that you've built over the years. And with that accomplished, you guys can really kind of set it up so that anybody else that you work with can step in, help out a little bit, but you've got the comfort of knowing that everything is going to be the way you want it to be because you can lock down everything that you need. Now, with that said, we'll take a brief look at some of the new estimating features in here as well. Again, the assemblies are the big one. So with ConstructionSuite, we've always had as a partner RS Means. RS Means is a national pricing company. They've developed cost books or price books for decades now that have been available across all of North America, or the United States and Canada at least. And with those cost books, if you've used them before, you know that they are very item rich. Some of these cost books can have upwards of maybe 40,000 line items in them. And so one thing that RS Means has always done, and one of the tools that we've always provided in that partnership with RS Means, is the ability to create assemblies. And an assembly is, not just with RS Means, but in any system, the assembly is going to be a collection of the parts and pieces required for building one thing. So if you were doing something like a shower assembly, you might have a tub, you might have the shower head and the fixtures and the, everything, the tile and whatever might be included in that. You could even set up a bathroom assembly, which would include not only the shower assembly itself, but you might have a sink and a toilet, and you guys might have tile for the floors and the windows. All of that could be built into an assembly, and then when you're inserting it into your estimate, you just have one unit to work with. Now, for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to work with these yet, you'll actually find something similar here in the method column. There's going to be the assembly option available to you here, and when you set an assembly, this gives you the ability to come into and assign a quantity to the subcategory level, and that quantity will then update all of the line items, so each of the quantities within that would be adjustable from there as well. So if we were to start with a base assembly of 1 unit, going through and changing this from 1 to 2 would actually double all of the item requirements within the subcategory. So if we just change it to a 2, suddenly we have twice as much. We change it to a 10, it'll have 10 times the original number. From here, if you change it back to a 1, of course, it's going to carry back down to this. Now, those of you who've been working with ConstructionSuite 8 may recognize this feature, or you might have seen it insert in from the RS Means cost books or your own custom cost books already. One thing that ConstructionSuite 9 is going to add to this mix is the ability to use these assemblies when you're pushing the information over to QuickBooks or things like that. Now, previously, when you push this over, the assembly would be treated as a subcategory that might be set as a lump sum. Now we're going to start breaking these things down so that you'll have quantities broken out by assembly quantity, and it'll recalculate a unit cost or a unit price depending on what sort of transaction you're building. So if you were to push this over to a purchase order, for example, for footers materials, it'll give you a quantity of 1 or 5 or 10 or whatever the assembly quantity may be, and it'll recalculate a unit cost for you. I find that this is extremely beneficial for anybody who's working within these pre-packaged units. So I see a lot of it for companies that do specialty work or subcontracted work, or even companies that just try to use the same sort of structure or wish to speed up their process. In fact, we've got one home builder in Australia who's used assemblies, a combination of assemblies and custom cost books to create an estimate that takes about 15 minutes to completely generate a full estimate from scratch. So because he set up these assemblies and because he's got all the pricing information available within one of those cost books, he opens up the estimate, he refreshes the item costs, and then all he has to do is go through and assign the assemblies for each of these major pieces. How many windows are we using? How many bathrooms are in the house? How many square feet are in this house? And how much of that's got to be carpeted versus hardwood floors versus, maybe we're putting in trim and paint and all these things. Each of those could be assigned as an assembly. So you'll set yourself up so that you've got just a handful of numbers that you've got to plug in, and it'll preload all of the parts and the pieces. And when this goes over to QuickBooks, it still recalculates all of those to give you something like a square foot cost for painting, for example. So it simplifies this process down substantially, and pushing the information is still going to be a part of the QuickBooks integration. And again, it's going to apply whenever you're pushing over new estimates, new invoices, purchase orders, change orders, or credit memos. All of these will be available to you in there as well. And as you work your way through that, you'll notice that the assembly costs, or the unit costs for the assemblies, will start to show up in QuickBooks the more you expand upon that. Now, the third major piece that we're going to be looking at now, after going through some of the ConstructionSuite estimating components, is the PlanSwift integration. So again, for those of you who've been using the ConstructionSuite program for years and years, you'll know that we have a lot of CAD and Takeoff partners available. CAD partners like Chief Architect and AutoCAD Revit, or Takeoff partners like PlanSwift or SoftPlan or eTakeoff. And most of the integration that we've had available with them for the past decade or so has included the ability to generate a materials list from a Takeoff or a PDF in a program like PlanSwift, take that materials list over to ConstructionSuite, and build a new estimate from scratch. Of course, these options have always been available under the File menu for those of you who are using the Premier or Catalyst versions of ConstructionSuite and above. And in the File menu, in any given estimate, you can import that materials list here. You can see our list of various different CAD and Takeoff partners, digital Takeoff partners here. Now, what we've done with PlanSwift, we've opened up a new possibility with PlanSwift where we actually generate a plugin directly in PlanSwift from your ConstructionSuite installation. In order to create this plugin, this direct connection to PlanSwift, all we need you to do is go to the PlanSwift, or to the ConstructionSuite main interface rather. Here we are. Go up to the data menu, and you will find your install button right here in the data menu. Install PlanSwift plugin. And this will take just a moment or two for you to go through and generate a new button in PlanSwift that'll pull the information over from there. When you're pulling this information in, the PlanSwift application is going to give you an area where you can actually generate your takeoffs. I'm just using one of the standard ones that comes available within the PlanSwift program. So as you're taking a look at the takeoff, you've got the various different areas in here that you guys have measured out. Each of these areas also uses concepts like the assemblies or the items, and you can actually drag these items or assemblies into the takeoff or the measurement that you've generated. Here, for example, we've got square footage for what we would consider to be a standard warehouse trace or area. And when we're dragging in the components for the warehouse, it'll populate the number of items based on all the measurements for the red traced area here. You'll also notice that with PlanSwift, not only are we going to be doing tracing for perimeters and for areas and things like that, we'll also have the ability to set up counts in PlanSwift, like counting the number of doors available on here as well. And so doors would also show up as an option available to you guys here. It also has a count, and as you go through and build the materials list from the parts and the assemblies available within PlanSwift, it puts together that material list for you, which looks something like this. We'll go to the Estimating tab and take a look at all the parts and pieces that are going to be available here in PlanSwift. So as we're looking at this, PlanSwift has all the different individual traces, and they've got all the parts that might be going into that trace here. For example, the lobby trace typically includes things like hardwood flooring, a ceiling grid, and acoustical ceiling tiles. There's going to be the grid and tile labor installation in here as well. All of this is going to be part of installing what we would consider to be typical labor inclusion, or typical lobby inclusion, rather. As we're looking at the office itself, open office space also has its own collection of items. The warehouse space has its collection of items, including concrete slab and epoxy and things like that. And as you look through all of these various different options, you'll find all the parts, the pieces, and their various different assemblies or groupings with notes, descriptions, prices. All of this is going to be available from PlanSwift. And we now have two options for how to organize this information as it's all coming back in from PlanSwift and generating a new ConstructionSuite estimate. What you'll see up at the top of the estimating tab itself are two buttons, one from ConstructionSuite, one from ConstructionOnline, and this integration option that we have available with PlanSwift is going to be available for either program. So if you're working with a ConstructionSuite desktop application, you can generate the plugin as we did and pull the information in to automatically create an estimate in ConstructionSuite based on the takeoff that we're looking at here. You can do the same thing if you're working with ConstructionOnline instead or as well, just clicking the ConstructionOnline button to generate an estimate in one of your projects online. Now, the option for ConstructionSuite typically takes all of these items that we've spelled out in the trace or in the takeoff, and it'll include the item names, the descriptions, the quantities, the unit costs, like all of this information that you see in the portion itself, with the exception of the colors. We're not going to be grabbing those. And it organizes most of this information as it stands using the divisions and subdivisions assigned to each of these items. So for any of you who have estimated using something similar to the CSI 16 division structure or the 50 division structure, anything like that, you may notice that they have this similar kind of division standardization where they've got Division 1 general requirements, Division 2 might be site work, Division 3 concrete. Most of this kind of falls in line with the same division structure. And so by default, PlanSwift has most of these items assigned to a specific division, but at any time you can always come in here and just type in something else that you'd like instead. Could have one Division 1 general requirements, or we could just type in something new. The subdivision in this case, for an installation contracts, maybe we create a subcategory called contracts and permits. So this creates a division for our estimate, what we would refer to as a category. The subdivision, what we would refer to as a subcategory, will show up in a new estimate created when we click this button. And the rest of the information from this takeoff in PlanSwift will show up in the estimate using the same rules or the same guideline. Whatever is used in the division column creates a category for us. Whatever is used in the subdivision will create a subcategory, and this item will appear in this subcategory, in this category, with descriptions, quantities, unit costs, units. All of this will pull in directly. So if you're using the divisions and subdivisions as the method for pulling in the information, make sure that you turn on the division and subdivision columns, which can be done using the columns button. And this will open up the spaces for you to go through and assign the division and the subdivision for each of these items, or over on the templates and inputs, you can actually assign the division and subdivision on each of those items here instead. Now there's also the other possibility, the one that you guys may be more familiar with if you've been using PlanSwift through the years. PlanSwift also has the ability to organize all of this information according to how you set up your traces. So in this case, the area that we've measured off for the lobby would be considered one of our subcategories, which is going to show up under a category that we've called, well, in this case it's from PlanSwift, so it's sample plan takeoffs, and then each of the items will show up here. This is an excellent way to organize your estimates, maybe by rooms or by pages in the takeoff if you guys are doing the PDF here. It just helps group this information in a way that makes a lot more sense for companies that are either doing multiple buildings or multiple units, or maybe even like remodeling projects. We've had a partnership with Remodelers Advantage for years and years, and one thing that I find is a common thread through most of the most successful remodelers that we've worked with in the US and Canada has been the need to organize these costs by room or by area that they're going to be using for the estimate itself, giving your client the ability to go through and say, I see this portion, this 2-room set is going to cost us maybe $120,000. The option to do the kitchen as well for $80,000 is something that maybe we need to hold off on for the time being. So let's separate that out from the estimate, and we'll just go with the $120,000 contract for now. This gives you the ability to do so. Again, just using, in this case, the folder names, the trace names, and the item names as our category, subcategory, and line items. Now again, my go-to is typically to use the divisions and subdivisions. I find this makes it easiest for me to describe when we're talking about standardization, or we've got clients that do just about anything under the sun, from golf course irrigations to underground piping to we have residential builders, new home builders. We've got remodeling companies that work with us. We've even got groups that have built things like amusement parks in China, or we've got the group that built the Captain Morgan's Resort down off the coast of Florida. So all of this works with some form of standardization. So when we're talking about something like the CSI 16 or the 50 division structure, it's just, this is an easy way to accomplish that structure, or to set that structure in the estimate before we even have an estimate to work on. So again, since we'll be using that option for now, I'm going to go ahead and click the Export to UDA On Cost button, and this is going to take us through the process of creating the estimate, and then it's going to ask us where we want to save it and how we want to organize that information. You'll notice that as we're going through this, it is going to give us the option to create new projects too. So the beauty of that is, for any of you who would like to start with your takeoff and then follow the process through from there, you can go ahead and import the set of plans, start generating your takeoff. From the takeoff, come into and maybe create a new project here, or even save it as an opportunity. Again, if you guys are using the Premier or Catalyst versions of ConstructionSuite and above, and you have the lead tracking features, you could create it as an opportunity or a project, and then just save this new estimate in accordingly. Now I'm going to cancel out of this for the moment, just to give you guys an idea of what the structure might look like. So again, here we've got that general requirements category that we created, the division for that. The subcategory, contracts and permits, is going to be here. That's the one that we set up. And it's going to have the pricing information in here for the installation contract as well. You'll see some of the other items coming in here, and you'll see some of the other organization and things like that too. I would mention that it is going to be a pretty important step in this process to make sure that you're actually organizing, you're assigning everything to their various different areas. This way you don't end up having unnamed categories or unnamed subcategories in after the fact. Again, as long as you go into those estimates and you set divisions and subdivisions, everything is going to be organized accordingly. If you forget, not a problem. You can always just come into and reorganize your categories or rename these categories and subcategories later. Simply click into the area that you guys would like to work with. That's probably not how you spell it, but that's okay. As you go through and you set up all of this information, you can just rename it accordingly from there. Now this does highlight one of the benefits of using the ConstructionSuite templates, or at least going into and taking that template information and making it available through PlanSwift with your items and your categories and such. If you define a naming scheme that you'd like to work with between ConstructionSuite and PlanSwift, then you'll never have to go through this step of renaming everything. It saves you time, effort, and most importantly, your money whenever you're paying off any of the team that's going to be working with this kind of information. So you're saving all of this by just outlining how you want these two programs to work together. Again, using that option to outline how the two programs work together will also benefit you long term when you start connecting into some of the other parts or pieces in this program, like generating reports, for example. You want those reports to use professional naming along with the professional look that we already provide through OnPoint. So having the naming scheme in there means those reports will come out looking spectacular the first time you make them every time. Pushing the information over to QuickBooks will get you the same great results every time as well. And of course, once you make this information available on ConstructionOnline so that your team can work with it from there, you'll also be setting them up for success by giving them the same kind of terms or familiar naming for what they're going to be looking for on each of these jobs. Now, of course, this is going to conclude most of what we have to show for you guys today. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any additional questions that might be coming through. I know Holly has actually flagged a few for me on top of all the ones that she's been able to handle through the webinar itself. So if you guys do have questions, or if you'd like to see anything else for now, by all means, send them in. We'll go ahead and take care of those questions and make sure that you guys get any and all of these answers in preparation for getting upgraded to the new version of Construction Suite. We're still super happy to get this out, and just in case you guys haven't checked with us yet, we expect this Construction Suite 9 upgrade to be available for most of our Total Care clients before the year's out. Of course, some of you guys may be getting these things before Christmas, or maybe you guys are on faster computers and you guys will be working with it there. Hopefully none of you are working on Christmas, but for those of you who do happen to open it up, maybe you'll see it there too. So again, keep your eye out for these. Anybody who is currently on Total Care with a current version of Construction Suite 8, you'll be getting a pop-up notification that this new program is going to be available. All you have to do is click yes, I want to install it now, and it'll take care of the rest. So keep an eye out for that. Also, as a side note, we are recording this webinar, so it should be available on YouTube for you guys soon. So if there's anything that you'd like to go back and recap, we'll have it for you shortly. For now, though, like I mentioned, we're going to pause for just a moment as we collect up all the questions that we need to answer, and then we'll go live with some of those answers to these questions. We'll be reading them off and going from there. So one moment, guys, and we'll be right back with you. Okay, guys, thanks for your patience. We actually had one of our other senior product specialists just stop in for a moment, asked what kind of topics you guys were most interested in, so I'm glad to see the bunch of questions were just coming through again now. We'll start with some of these questions. I'm going to go back up to the top of the list where Holly has one flagged from one of our current users here. Looks like the question is, what is the unit of measure for the footer, looks like cubic yards, square footage, how does it calculate what's necessary? Great question. And to give you an idea, let's step back into this area where we're looking at the various different items or materials or components. And I'm actually going to open up one of the RS Means cost books and talk to you guys about kind of what we're looking at for these. So if you're taking a look at the RS Means cost books, again, which just has several of these assemblies pre-packaged in them, we'll switch over to hopefully one of the residential cost books, which has a number of assemblies built in, or for those of you using the commercial versions of Construction Suite, you'll find a few thousand assemblies available in the commercial cost book as well. But as you open up these various different cost books and come in and change to one that includes assemblies, you'll find that most of the items in the cost book itself will have a unit cost for the item based on how you would typically measure the item itself. For example, if we're looking at pine trim here, you would typically measure pine trim in linear footage, or maybe you guys buy it in 8-foot or 10-foot segments or something like that, in which case it'll have a material cost per linear foot and a labor cost to install a single linear foot. Now, of course, this is how RS Means provides these prices. You guys may use something different, but I find that this is beneficial because it's calculated an average labor cost based, of course, on your region. It looks like we might actually be working out of Puerto Rico right now. But it's based on your region, coming up with the pricing and information available for you for an average cost. Now, of course, if you guys were going to be doing interior walls or interior partitions, you will probably have some pine trim. You'll probably have some gypsum wallboard or some sheetrock. You'll have studs. You'll have paint and tape and mud and labor to do the installations and everything like that. All of this is going to be included. Maybe you'll even have crown molding or something like that. In which case, when we switch over to the assemblies side, you'll find areas like interior partitions which have some of these components already built in. So if we were looking for an interior wall with half-inch sheetrock taped and finished, you'll notice a collection of different things. So again, we've got baseboards here. Baseboards are typically going to be in square footage. This wall, by the way, is a standard, I believe this one's going to be a standard 8-foot wall. And so this one's measuring in square footage. And so it's not a standard 8-foot wall, it's just per square foot of interior wall. And we're assuming that it's going to be about 8 feet tall, which is why we have an eighth of a unit of trim in this case. Again, we're starting to get a little bit specific on this, but if you just wanted to figure out what your total cost for your interior walls were, if we assume that it's an 8-foot high wall, every 8 units of the assembly gives us 1 unit of trim. 8 feet high, 1 foot wide, so 1 linear foot of trim. Now for gypsum wallboard, we've measured this in square feet in the cost book, so 1 square foot of wallboard or sheetrock equates to 1 square foot of assembly, so we've got a value of 1. Looks like this is for finishing corners. So we don't have too many corners. Again, the assembly just kind of comes up with a rough number to work with, and so we've got some rough quantities in here too. Now the beauty of this is the assembly includes all the parts and pieces. RS Means has figured out what, for an average project, should be included and how many parts or pieces would be included. It even includes the labor requirements and potentially any equipment usage or subcontracted costs if you need a specialist. So when you insert it into an estimate and you use the portion here to figure out how much, in this case we're still working with interior walls, let's say we need 400 square feet of interior walls, it puts in all the parts, all the pieces, recalculates based on the assembly value of 400 units. So it goes through and it does the math for you, so you only have to remember, hey, we had 400 square feet of interior walls, that's what we're working with. Now, one of the follow-up questions that we have a little bit further down, are the assemblies built in PlanSwift or UDA? This is a great question too. If you guys are using the PlanSwift integration, I would recommend building most of your assemblies and your item components, just import that into PlanSwift. Build the information in there, because then that information is available in one source to send back into ConstructionSuite. Now from there, you can always supplement it by adding in more items from ConstructionSuite. You'll also be able to export that cost book or item set from PlanSwift to pull into ConstructionSuite if need be. But since PlanSwift may be your source, if you're using PlanSwift and QuickBooks, or PlanSwift and ConstructionSuite rather, QuickBooks comes later. But if PlanSwift is your source, work with PlanSwift. If you like working with ConstructionSuite more, go ahead and build the assembly set and the items and everything like that in ConstructionSuite. You'll just be going through and updating the prices once they come in from PlanSwift after they do so. So great questions there. Let's take a look at another. Can you show an example of manual actuals versus QuickBooks actuals? Somebody's been reading my column headers. This is good. We talked about that a little bit with the locking mechanism as well, or the locking feature down here at the bottom. You do have a pair of options here when you're working with ConstructionSuite for tracking actual costs on jobs. Generally, with ConstructionSuite, you will either be using QuickBooks to manage all of your expenses and your costs, in which case importing your actual costs from QuickBooks is a very simple, straightforward thing. You come up to the QuickBooks Integration tab, you click Import from QuickBooks, and you choose Import QuickBooks Actuals. This is going to pull in all the bills, all the checks, all the payroll items or credit card charges, any cost that has already been put into QuickBooks that one of your team members has already taken the time to put together and track and keep up with. It's going to pull all of that in automatically with no manual data entry. Now, of course, some of you guys may not be using QuickBooks, or you may not have made that connection yet. Shame on you if you have it available and you haven't done it. If you'd like to, give me a call and we can help you guys get it set up. But if you are using the manual options instead, we'll go to the Tools menu. We'll switch it over so that we have a manual actual column. Just uncheck the import box. Import actuals from QuickBooks. Since we're not importing from QuickBooks, we'll turn that off. Open up the manual actual column. And then it's just a matter of typing in your manual actuals. Of course, since they are done manually in this case, you literally just click into the space, type in however much you guys spent, move on to the next item. This does still work with the variance column, and it still does feed into all of your estimate versus actuals reports. So even if you choose to go into and work with manual actuals instead of QuickBooks actuals, you'll still be able to take advantage of all the financial reports and resources and the WIP report available to you guys through ConstructionSuite as well. So if you're using these various different tools, whether you're putting the costs in manually to track here, or you're using the tools or taking advantage of the ability to import that information, that work that's already been put into QuickBooks, regardless of your choice, you'll be able to take full advantage of all the financial resources and reports available through ConstructionSuite as well. So good one on that. Next series of questions. Let's see, we've got another set of clients asking if we can create an assembly which will spread the content throughout multiple categories or cost codes. At the moment, most of our assemblies are structured to work from individual subcategories like this one. So if you did set up something like wall systems, the assembly comes in and creates a subcategory within one of the categories for this. That question that you've asked, though, does lead to some additional topics, some advanced topics that we could work with in one of our upcoming estimating webinars, if you guys join us for this one, where we start talking about how assemblies and tools like dimensions, which do span various different categories and subcategories, can kind of work together, or you can use several of these different tools to accomplish exactly that. So if you connect various different sections using a dimension, then you put in that one measurement, and that one measurement, much like the assembly is working here, can update several areas in the estimate with that. I find that it's very, very common when you guys are starting to work through something like exterior finishes, which could apply to if you guys are doing siding or something like that. It might include the siding, or it might include removal of the existing siding, or it could include the weatherproofing, or it could include any dry rot repairs or anything like that. That one measurement, that one dimension that you guys put in there could be used to come up with the cost of siding, the cost of painting, the cost of weatherproofing. All of these different things tie into it, and the labor would be included as well. Again, bit of an advanced feature. I love the question, though, because again, it starts to really dive into some of these really, really beneficial tools that most of you guys might not be familiar with, but are just laying there waiting in this system for you guys to find and discover and take advantage of. There's always one more thing in there. I've been working with this company for almost 10 years now, and I still discover great features in here that I didn't know about before. So again, dimensions are certainly one to look for. I highly recommend you guys take a look at those. So next up, assemblies in PlanSwift. We already took care of that question. You can build them in PlanSwift or UDA. Up to you which one you guys use, but if you're going to be starting from PlanSwift, it just kind of makes sense to go there since that information is going to carry back. Can you assign markups at the assembly level or the category level, or just on an item? Looks like that one has a couple of little subsections to it. So one thing that I'll recommend about this, so we're looking at the assemblies as the assemblies are coming in and the markup options that are available with them. One thing that I hope you guys have taken advantage of already, if you guys haven't, let's take a look at that now. There's a few different markup options available to you guys with the estimates in ConstructionSuite, and with the inclusion of the assemblies, there's a few that are going to be automatic or built into the system as is. One of the big ones that I'd recommend in this case is the ability to go up to and apply markups based on the classification of work that you guys are doing. Now, the classification-based markups are incredible because as you guys go into and assign something like a material markup or a labor markup or a subcontractor markup, all of this becomes automatically applied to each of the areas of the assembly where they belong. So again, the assembly that we were looking at earlier had some materials and some labor. If you have a material markup and a labor markup, it covers both. They each get marked up accordingly. The alternative, which I hope most of you guys have used, is the ability to go back and work with the company overhead and margin section, which just does a global markup. It covers all of you guys. So again, when your bookkeeper is talking about profitability on a job and they say that you guys made 20%, or you guys had a 20% gross profit or something like that, which is gross profit, it's okay, depending on the kind of work that you guys are doing. I prefer that you guys tell me that you guys have a 20% net profit, but that's okay. Maybe you'll get there using some of these new tools. But when they're talking about these numbers, they're typically referring to margin, which is what you'll find in the company overhead margin section. So if you guys are interested in getting those numbers or applying those numbers, or if you follow any of the accounting practices from some of the major players like QuickBooks Made Easy, or Intuitive Accountant, I think, was the company that William Murphy works for. He wrote an article on us a few years back, which was, in his word, tremendous. But as you're working through this, if you want to follow all of these common practices, these common accounting practices, take a look at the company overhead margin. It's the most applicable in that case. So let's see. There's 3 or 4 more, so if you guys don't want me to get to the end of the list and close the webinar, you better start sending in more questions. I'd love to have these coming through. And you're going to have to give me good ones too, otherwise Holly's going to answer them and you're not going to have the chance to hear it on live here. What does the estimate look like when import to QuickBooks? Okay, that is another good question as well. When you send it to QuickBooks, that depends on your settings. Now, in this case, I don't want to dive into that. That's actually a completely second, there's a whole webinar in and of itself, which we did and have recorded. If you'd like, we can send you the link to YouTube, or if you guys again, want to set up one of the special sessions or some one-on-one training to make sure that everything gets configured and set up well leading into the new year, let us know. Give us a call. We can talk about that and we can get working with that as well. Is it possible to import items from Excel? Yes, and. There's several different possibilities for how we pull the information in. If you want to import the items in to create a cost book, that can be done. There's an Excel spreadsheet or a format that we offer that actually outlines all the costs and all the items and helps you guys organize. We can provide that if you guys are interested. Almost all of the CAD imports also use Excel as the base file type as well. So if you guys are interested in seeing what those look like, take a look at some of those, the Excel templates that we use there. There's several different possibilities, and since Excel is completely open, you could literally put anything you want in those Excel files and organize them however you want. We can provide all of these different structured templates so that you can fit a mold that we would then be able to read and use in a very quick and easy import. So just let us know. In fact, for anything like that, if you guys have something that you'd like us to take a look at or send to you, just reach out to us, preferably at support@uda1.com. Send us an email, and then we can send you an email reply back with all the resources that you guys would need to get those things up and running. Now, it does look like there's a few additional questions, too. We'll try to get to those after the webinar itself. But unfortunately, at this point, guys, while I appreciate your time, we have run out of it. So at this point, don't forget, we will be recording this. It should be produced and available on ConstructionOnline, and that should be within the next few days. For all of you guys attending, you'll probably receive a link to the session itself. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking about some of these great new features available through Construction Suite 9, and we can't wait to get it out to all of you guys. We'll be doing that again over the next few days or week or so. And when you have it, if you have questions, by all means, reach out to us here. You can find all of our contact information back in the main Construction Suite interface. Just go up to the Help menu and take a look under the contact information where you'll find phone numbers, email addresses, and a number of other ways to reach us. Unfortunately, in this case, for the couple of you guys who are asking, I'm not going to give you a direct line to Holly. Even though she's been incredible getting all of these things taken care of, I very much prefer that you guys have the opportunity to talk to our entire team. It's getting bigger and bigger every day. A lot of great people here, and we're happy to have them on staff, and we want to share the wealth a little bit. So by all means, reach out to us directly when you guys have the chance. For now, though, again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Once again, my name is Ian Schaefer. I'm one of the Senior Product Specialists here at UDA Technologies. Guys, been a pleasure working with you. If we don't talk to you beforehand, I hope you guys have amazing holidays, all of you, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk to you guys again at IBS. So thanks again for your time, and I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon. Take care, everyone.